Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Andy Huckaba of Huckaba & Associates. I serve as chair of the Lenexa Chamber's Government Affairs Committee, and it's my honor to moderate today's forum. On behalf of the Johnson County Public Policy Council, collaboration of all 10 area local chambers of commerce, and particularly on behalf of today's co-hosts, the Shawnee and Lenexa Chambers of Commerce, thank you for joining our candidate event featuring Kansas House District 17. I'd like to begin by sharing the format for our forum this afternoon, which will include 2-minute opening statements by the candidates, a moderated question and answer period during which candidates will each have 1.5 minutes to respond, followed by a 1-minute closing statement for each of us. The format, questions, and time limits will be the same for every candidate, and there will be no follow-up questions, formal rebuttal time, or audience participation. Candidate speaking order has been randomly determined with the candidates and will rotate throughout the program. Now, if everybody will please take a moment to make sure your cell phones are silenced, let's begin. First, I'll introduce our candidates in alphabetical order. The district includes portions of southern Shawnee and northern Lenexa. Emily Carpenter. Republican candidate Emily Carpenter is a native Kansan, a graduate of Emporia State University, where she was a highly decorated student athlete. She and her husband are small business owners, have 4 children, and are actively involved in supporting the adoption and foster care community. Her family lives in Lenexa. Democratic incumbent candidate Representative JoEllen Hoy was first elected to represent District 17 in 2020. She is a graduate of Cornell College, earned her MPA from KU, has worked in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors, and currently serves on the Lenexa Planning Commission. She lives with her husband and son in Lenexa. Libertarian candidate Michael Kerner is originally from Brooklyn, New York. He is a graduate of New York University and retired from Honeywell International after 49 years as an engineer. He serves on the executive committee of the Libertarian Party of Kansas and is active in a number of civic organizations. He resides in Lenexa and has several children and grandchildren. So we'll begin with our opening statements by candidates. Candidates will have 2 minutes each to present their opening statements, and from our random drawing, Emily will begin.
Thank you, Andy. Good afternoon. I would like to first thank the Lenexa, Shawnee, and Olathe Chambers of Commerce for this opportunity. Thank you to Ashley for her work in organizing this forum, and Andy for moderating. My name is Emily Carpenter, and it is my privilege to be running for Kansas State House of Representatives for District 17. And like Andy already stated, I'm a native Kansan, born and raised in Wellsville, Kansas. I attended Emporia State University on a full scholarship for women's basketball. I graduated in 2001 with a degree in health promotion. Health and fitness has always been an important part of my life, and I enjoy educating others on how they too can stay healthy mentally and physically. I was named Kansas Woman of the Year by the NCAA in 2001, and most recently was inducted in the Kansas Sports Hall of Fame on October 2nd. My husband Derek and I have been married for 19 years, and we have 4 children that attend public school, a sophomore in high school, an 8th grader, a 5th grader, and a 4-year-old. I'm a small business owner, and my family has served as a protective home in Johnson County for children in crisis who have no other place to stay. I have no political agenda. My children are my reason for running, and I'm concerned about the next generation of Kansans. They are watching us, and we need to set an example, and I would like to lead by example. By having conversations, respectful conversations, and listening to the community, I want to bring community into politics, and I want to be the voice of that community in Topeka. I believe if elected, together we can move forward to make common sense solutions that will allow Kansas to be the best state it can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Our next opening statement is from Mike Kerner. Mike.
Hi, my name is Michael Kerner. I'm the Libertarian candidate in this race. I've lived in Kansas in this district since 1997. I am widowed and retired with 3 children and 4 grandchildren. I'm taking on this responsibility at the age of 75 because I fear greatly for the future of those grandchildren. In my lifetime, I've seen the two big parties change places between being the evil party and the stupid party. Today, on the national level, it's the Democrats that are the evil party and the Republicans who can't figure out how to stop them. 20 years ago, it was reversed. Remember the Iraq War and the weapons of mass destruction nonsense? It is time that voters stop picking the lesser evil among the two old parties that continually screw things up and give libertarians a chance to show you how great things can be under true personal freedom guided by the non-aggression principle. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Our third candidate is Representative Joella Hoy. Joella.
Good afternoon. I'm Joella Hoy. It's an honor to represent Kansas House District 17 in the Kansas House of Representatives. And thank you all for being here today. It's always a pleasure to be with my chamber folks in Shawnee and Lenexa and keep those lines of communication open. As you heard, I came to Kansas to get my master's degree in public administration from KU, and that really started my career in public service. And while I was here, we decided how much we love Kansas and chose to purchase our home here and start our family. My son is a 5th grader at Rising Star. I'm a PTA mom, and I have done numerous volunteer activities throughout the community. One of which being chapter leader for Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And that's what inspired me to run for office, because I want to help use my nonpartisan local government background. I want to help end the gun violence crisis. Our kids deserve an excellent public education. They deserve the best learning experience, and they must be safe in the classroom.
Thank you, Joella. So now we move on to the moderated question and answer point. Candidates will have 1.5 minutes each to respond, and the speaking order will rotate with each question. So question number 1, and Mike will be our first respondent. What are your views on state tax policy? Being as specific as you can.
Taxation is theft. That's the first basic rule of libertarianism. So yes, we need to reduce taxes. The income tax is probably the worst because it discourages production, discourages business formation, and chases employees away. So I would make #1 priority reducing the state income tax ultimately to 0. If I can't get that just right away, then I certainly want to index all the breakpoints for inflation. That means the brackets, the deductions should all be indexed for inflation, so that the current inflation fiasco we're going through doesn't bracket creep everybody into higher tax rates.
Thank you. Joella.
All Kansans should be able to live on their earnings and their wages, even when times are tough. And I joined a bipartisan coalition to eliminate the state sales tax on food, but I do remain frustrated that we didn't immediately eliminate that. I don't like the approach to phase it out over the next few years until 2025. So I hope that that's something that we can come together on in January. We keep hearing from constituents that it's hard to pay for groceries right now. Let's save them around $500 a year and eliminate that tax. I also support a 3-day sales tax relief for back-to-school shopping for educators and for families. Those are necessary learning supplies, and we need to help families save where we can. We can't control where prices and costs are going, but we have the surplus due to measured leadership by the governor. And if we have the capability to help Kansans save, we should do that. I also support those decisions being made at the local level. We heard loud and clear that the state should focus on the state portion of the taxes and let local governments implement their policies. When the state starts meddling in local control with our 3-tier tax system, I think it becomes problematic.
Thank you. And Emily.
Our state budget is balanced and enjoys a healthy rainy day fund, and this is a good thing. We must be wise stewards of our taxpayer dollars. This means looking at every program to ensure it's working and being ran efficiently. Government has to stop doing anything that further increases the inflation and the cost of living. I support the recent elimination of food sales. Just like Joella said, it needs to be immediate, but it's something that hopefully we can work on if elected. It was a great start to help Kansans, and I think that legislature should do more to ease the economic burden with more focus on middle-class families and seniors. The small reduction in property taxes this past session was a positive step, and I'd like to see more done in this area. I support a tax system that is most conducive to economic growth, helping families keep more of their hard-earned dollars, and does not penalize success.
Thank you. Question number 2. This, Joella will be our first respondent. What are your views on K-12 education funding and accessibility?
I serve on the K-12 Education Budget Committee, and prioritizing full funding of our schools is a priority for me. We are fully funded now, but it's not the state that's fully funding it because the state did not include the correct amount of special education funding. And that means that our school districts, for my district, that's Shawnee Mission and DeSoto, that costs Shawnee Mission $8 million and $4 million for DeSoto. So think of all the things that can be done with that funding if the state would put up the amount that we should. The other issue is process related. The school budget, K through 12, is over half of our state's entire budget. And we have decided to pull that budget out of the Appropriations Committee, circumvent the appropriations process, and tie it to controversial policy. And it makes it so that we are using the power of the purse to influence curriculum, to influence policies that should be made by our local school districts, like open enrollment. And that goes into effect 2024 if we're not able to go back and remove that component of the policy change. That means that our local school districts are not only required to educate their own students, but other district students as well. And I believe that we should stop using the budget as a way to try to control our local school districts.
Thank you. Emily.
Student achievement in Kansas is showing signs of decline, and that should be a concern for everyone. I believe in student-focused education, which means all policy and funding decisions should be geared for what is best for the student. We need to be directing funding to the classroom, embracing innovation, providing students with more opportunities to succeed. Quality curriculum and involving parents. As a mother of 4 children, 3 currently attend public school and the 4th will be entering kindergarten next year. I am well invested in the public education system. Ensuring that we continue to attract quality teachers is very important to me. And that is why I do support continuing fully funding the schools, ensuring that the dollars reach the classrooms, which means teachers, and that is where the students will receive the most benefit.
Thank you. And Mike.
Well, the last 2 years have taught us what a poor job the public schools do. They put political indoctrination and ahead of education. They put all sorts of things, and they're wasting money hand over fist. I would advocate any way we can give people school choices to get away from public school and into private schools, whether that becomes options or scholarship granting organizations or tax credits. But one way or the other, give people the option to take their kids and their money with them to go to private school. And I'm pretty sure the public schools will just fade away into nothingness in a few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go on to the next question. Question number 3, what types of economic development policies do you support to encourage job growth and business expansion in Kansas? And we'll start with Emily.
Thank you. I support ensuring that the economic climate in Kansas is as attractive to business as possible. I favor tax and regulatory policy that benefits all Kansans, all businesses in Kansas, and we need to create an environment that is conducive to businesses and entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Mike.
Okay, obviously we need to reduce taxes to make Kansas a better place for them to do business. But I object to anything special like TIF grants, where a new incoming business gets some kind of benefit that the existing businesses don't get. That's not fair at all. If it's too expensive to do business in the state and you have to give somebody a grant, then cut everybody's taxes. Nothing else is fair.
Thank you. And Joella.
As a former member of the Lenexa Planning Commission, I have seen firsthand how these incentives create a positive business climate and eventually help expand our tax base and are very positive for our communities. I did join the bipartisan group of lawmakers to show that we are global competitors for business, that we can attract companies like Panasonic. And again, back to local control, let's make sure that our local governments have these tools in order to be attractive to business. But also then when we do see surplus and we have benefited from these, let's take care of the workforce and the people who live here and work here and make sure they have a place to live. And that goes along with getting some of that money back to our taxpayers. Again, with the business community, keep the lines of communication open. It is so important that we listen and hear how the decisions that we're making in Topeka impact you. And having these chamber events and lunches and asking us these questions is extremely beneficial to those of us making those decisions in Topeka.
Thank you. Next question. Mike will be our first respondent. What would you do to grow and develop the state's workforce?
Well, the first thing you do is make it more amenable to live here with lower taxes. We've seen what's been going on with the high tax states and low tax states. There's a huge migration going on from places like California or New York and New Jersey to Texas and Florida because there's less regulation and less taxes. That's how you get people to come here. They're not going to come here if they're going to get the life taxed out of them. So that's number one, is reduce taxes. And then also improve education, which means get the dead hand of public education off and let people have an option of private education without double paying, without paying both taxes that support the public education system and then paying private tuition. If you choose to go private, you take the money with you.
Okay, thank you. Joella.
I'm supportive of hands-on learning and apprenticeship programs. I think our local school districts do a really good job. We have biotechnology programs, culinary programs. These are really good ways to expose people, young students, to career opportunities. But another issue that we're seeing with workforce is just society's view of professionals as a whole. For example, when we look at teaching as a profession, Emporia State, among other partners, conducted a survey of teacher satisfaction, and their lowest ranked satisfaction level was society's view of teaching as a profession. And that just makes me really sad. And you see this in healthcare. You see this across the board. We have to show, and the top, the top satisfaction is the district that I work in from teachers. Teachers love Kansas. Let's show them that love back. Let's stop putting out bills that create burdensome mandates and treating that and saying that teachers are doing this or that or saying this in the classroom, book bans. These types of things create a less positive work environment. I think that we all have a role to play in building up professionals and showing them the respect that they deserve and encouraging our children, like, this is a job you want to do someday. And that's a part of it. I know that's not really something we can totally do at the legislative level, but we can lead by example. And I'm also very concerned about hearing what's going on for safety of nurses and healthcare workers as well. So I'm very supportive of the workforce. Thank you.
Thank you. Emily.
Yes, as just one legislator, I would vote for policies that encourage people to live and stay in Kansas in the first place. That includes tax and economic policies that reward success and lift up families, opposing burdensome mandates and regulations, embracing technical education like Joella had mentioned, that trains people for well-paying jobs that can lead to lasting careers. I had a chance to speak to some high schoolers when I was inducted into the Sports Hall of Fame, and just listening to these juniors and seniors tell us what they wanted to do. Some didn't have any direction, and that's where I think we need to step in, like an example, and talk to these kids. Really, they're the next generation of Kansans. They need to understand and see firsthand experience people come in and talk to them and say, I make a living doing this, and it's very rewarding, and this is how you become that way. You don't have to go to a four-year school necessarily. Trades are so important, but like she said, they don't get the value that they need, and we need to show these people that there is value in teaching and nursing, and even though we've had a hard 2 years, there's such an important part in Kansas.
Thank you. Question number 5. Joella will be our first respondent. What do you believe the takeaways for state lawmakers should be from the COVID-19 pandemic experience?
We learned a lot of really tough lessons throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and I've also learned in having this discussion over the past couple of years that I am very often among people who lost loved ones to COVID, who are struggling with long-lasting symptoms of long COVID. And so first and foremost, just reminding everyone of the loss that so many people experienced, and deeply sorry for that. That being said, we also learned that it's hard to get everyone to come together for an extended period of time and be willing to protect our communities. So limiting the governor's power, limiting our local public health departments and county governments from being able to get information out and protect the citizenry during these times is not the right way to go. Thankfully, we really are on the other side of that. We are seeing our numbers continue to decrease, and we now know the proper tools to be able to protect ourselves in the instance of COVID-19, which is masking, getting vaccinated, getting boosted, and social distancing. And please stay home if you feel sick, because it's just not worth getting those numbers up again this winter. And if you're about to go on a trip or do something like that, take the proper precautions.
Thank you. Emily?
I believe that state lawmakers were wise to update our emergency management statutes to ensure proper checks and balances, ensure elected officials make decisions, and provide people due process. I believe this legislature should ensure mandates, lockdowns, and other related measures do not return.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Well, what we learned is, for the last few years, is that the CDC and the FDA are terrible sources of information and guidance. Almost everything they told us about COVID was wrong, and has now been proven wrong. And the lockdowns were horrendous. They were a horrendous penalty to the economy and served no purpose at all. And now that's very clear to people, even though the mainstream media isn't talking about it anymore. But they did everything wrong they could possibly have done. So yes, I would advocate for that constitutional amendment to be sure that the legislature can override state bureaucrats on such matters. And if anything, I would like something that forbid that anyone thinks about anything like lockdowns again in the future.
Thank you. Question 6. Emily will be our first respondent on this. What are your views on healthcare policy and Medicaid expansion?
While I'm open to discussion on this topic, I believe the focus of Medicaid should be on who it's truly intended for. I'm concerned about any step that would undermine the safety net, and any effort to expand this must be revenue neutral. I would encourage us to study the impact of changes to Medicaid in other states, and I'm more in favor of a free market approach to healthcare access, such as the recently adopted APRN bill, and allowing consumers more affordable choices.
Thank you. Mike?
Well, high level of medical care prices now is a direct result of all government interference in medical care since 1966. I was alive to see that happen, to see Medicare become established, and I saw prices skyrocketing almost immediately after that became effective. So I saw the consequences. You don't want more government interference, you want less. So I tell the story that my grandmother, before Medicare, a woman over 65 had an insurance policy that the premium was $45 a quarter, $15 a month for full Blue Cross and Blue Shield in New York City. And that's because you can go to the doctor for $5 at the time, and you can go to a hospital for $40 a day. And all of that got destroyed by Medicare. It drove prices up way past normal inflation.
Thank you. Joella?
I voted for Medicaid expansion. I'm the only candidate in the race that supports Medicaid expansion, and it's way past time that we expand Medicaid. This past year, there were actually more incentives to expand than ever. When we failed to expand Medicaid, we had to increase our general fund budget by $68.5 million. And the Kansas City Chamber just informed us that failing to expand Medicaid, Kansas has lost over $5.6 billion, and we keep losing out on funding and squandering federal dollars away to the detriment of our local hospitals and our statewide healthcare facilities. I've been touring hospitals over and over again. We hear how much they're paying in uncompensated care. One of them is $113 million at their hospital, and this is problematic because they're still caring for these patients, not getting those reimbursements from the state, and that in smaller areas can cause facilities to have to close. So I think it's really responsible of our dollars to ensure this access to care and fair reimbursement for services across the state. It's also would help with our workforce. It's hard to convince the best healthcare professionals to stay in Kansas, to come work here, if they're not being fairly reimbursed for their services.
Thank you. Question number 7, and we'll start with Mike. How control over decision-making is divided among the state legislature and local governments, including local school boards, on issues such as taxation, economic development, and education has been a matter of debate. What are your views on this issue? Mike?
General rule is you want to make the decision as close to the person as possible. You want to decentralize. You don't want some centralized authority, say in Washington or in Topeka, making all the decisions. You want to bring it down local, presumably because you have more control over your school board or your city council than you do over Congress. But we still have to limit the government's power altogether. They did way too much, and they tax us way too much.
Thank you. Joella?
With a local government background, I absolutely support local control. As I mentioned with the open enrollment of what we've done, put our school districts in the position of having to educate students other than in their own districts. They should be in charge of how they make decisions for non-transfer, for non-resident transfer students. I would also add public safety to this list. The state has weakened our gun laws over the past decade and taken the control of public safety and how to best keep communities safe away from those local governments by forcing them to have to allow people who don't even have to have training, a background check, or a permit to carry guns in all their facilities, including their employees. So when it comes to education, safety, economic development, the state absolutely has a role to play. We are partners, but we should not take those decisions out of your hands and take your flexibility away.
Thank you. Emily?
Having ran for school board and having a Shawnee City Councilwoman as my treasurer, I generally believe that local control, especially the schools, however, specific depends on the particular topic. Ultimately, it is the people who are in control, and I support public votes, such as what happened in Shawnee when 72% of the voters rejected the property tax increase, and when in Lenexa, where voters in 2018 supported the sales tax increase to improve funds.
Okay, thank you. Question number 8. This, Joella will start. What is the most important thing that distinguishes you from your opponents in this race?
Well, it's been an honor to be serving in this position, and I believe I've shown the district that hard work and civility are priorities to me, and that's how I represent them in Topeka. I have a 100% voting record. I didn't miss a vote. When there's a seat at the table for House District 17, I am there. And I feel that my background and experience put me in a good place to continue this job. I've learned how the committee process works and how to get bills through. So I've really shown that I've already am good at doing the job. I also ran for office because I believe wholeheartedly in public service and wanting to end the gun violence crisis and making sure that the voices of people who have been impacted by gun violence are heard throughout the legislative process.
Thank you. Emily?
I will be a strong advocate for the families of Shawnee and Lenexa. I have always fought for our students and taxpayers and will continue to do so in Topeka. I am a listener and a team player, and I'm not driven by only one issue.
Okay, thank you. Mike?
Individual freedom is my main value. I won't be looking for excuses for the government to tell you what to do. But I'll tell you one thing where I'm going to be very strong is gun control. I have absolutely no tolerance for any sort of gun control at all. If you do, you don't know history. Gun control has only killed people in the past. You need widespread ownership of guns to keep everybody safe. And that's going to be a big issue, I guess, and a big difference between me and Joella.
Thank you. Now on to closing statements. We'll do these in reverse order of the opening statements. And so we'll start with Joella. Each candidate will have 1 minute to present closing statements given in reverse order.
To those in District 17 and partners and members of the community that we continue to touch base throughout this time, it has been an absolute honor to serve in the Kansas House of Representatives. When I get to the Capitol, I look around and I just can't believe that this is what I'm doing. It's really a remarkable experience to get to have. That being said, I have heard from so many of you on so many different issues. I know how engaged my district is. They're very well informed. They expect their leader to listen to them and represent them well. And we still have work to do, so I'd really appreciate your vote. Please send me back to be your voice in Topeka on November 8th.
Thank you. Mike?
You've heard our positions. It's up to you, the voters, to decide who will represent the 17th district in Topeka. You can do what you've done in the past and try to discern who will do the least damage to your life, or you can boldly go where you haven't gone before and demand all your freedoms all the time. The non-aggression principle is often summarized as don't hurt people and don't take their stuff. I believe that applies not just to individuals, but to the government as well. So please support me and other Libertarian candidates on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Emily?
I'm running for Kansas State House of Representatives because I want to serve the community by listening and having respectful conversations. Over the last 4 months, I have knocked on upwards of 5,000 doors, having meaningful conversations with not just Republicans, but Democrats, unaffiliated, and Libertarians. And what I can tell you is while we may not agree on everything, we are not that far apart as the media tells you. I truly believe it is how we approach one another. Having a positive attitude and a desire to build relationships will lead to growth and success in District 17. No matter what party you're affiliated with, I will listen to your concerns. You will be seen, heard, and respected. My approach to politics is less politics, more community, and more conversations. And I want to be your voice in Topeka. So I ask for your support and your vote on November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our forum for House District 17. Everybody take a deep breath. Let's thank our candidates for participating in today's program. On behalf of the Shawnee, Lenexa, and Olathe Chambers of Commerce, thank you for taking advantage of this important opportunity to learn about the candidates. For more information about candidates, videos of candidate forums, and advanced voting details, visit www.votejoco.com, and please share this voter resource with your colleagues, family, and friends. Now we'll take a short intermission before reconvening our next forum featuring House District 30.